Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. That's week one in the books, guys. We're on to week two. What an insane week of college football it was. Here to help me break it down, as always, is my co-host at BuckMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
You know what? I hope everybody learned the lesson, and that is don't ever complain about a lackluster lineup of games because whenever we have that, that's when the best weekends happen. No?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, this week was very informative on a lot of things, and I had some strong positions and a couple of weaker positions, and I think most of my stronger positions, like not like betting positions, but like most of my stronger hunches survived, and some of the weaker ones have kind of taken hits, and some of them are better. So, but it's a very informative of like, oh, okay, that's exactly what I thought was going to happen, and it's like, okay, that's not exactly what I thought was going to happen. So, yeah, it was a very informative week of betting, and yeah, some very good games there. Honestly, there was quite a lot of good games as you go down the slate. But yeah, I like it was a very good weekend. It was nice to have college football back, so I'm happy about that.
And a good normal weekend too, not the
Yes.
not just a little appetizer plate and then they take it away before we get the entree.
hmm
Yeah. Okay. Should we dig into it? Um, who won the week?
I think you got to go right off the top of Florida State. I think they faced of anybody they had the strongest opponent, and they single handedly annihilated LSU. Now I know a lot of people are now like, I mean, LSU went from I think 7-1 to win the college football playoff to 40-1. That is the definition of an overreaction. Florida State could actually just be good. So let's not bury LSU yet. Florida State could just be that good. But man, though, like I think before the weekend, I actually, I think when we originally did the thing, I was kind of iffy on Florida State. I'm like, I don't know if they're going to be able to put it together or not. But then I kind of talked myself into it, and I pulled the trigger on a 25-1 bet for them to win the college football playoff. Um, that is looking very good right now.
Yeah.
After their and then especially after last night, after Clemson lost, that like it's looking like they might not be really much challenged in the ACC. So, yeah, Florida State I think is definitely they won the week. I think that's my number one winner hands down.
I agree. I also had them winning the week, and what I wanted to do here. Let me. Hopefully, we can see that. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted just to kind of go over just when I'm doing my projections. This is a team profile, and I've got Florida State and Clemson because they were, both projected to be about the same in the top 10, and some people actually had Clemson ahead of Florida State, and I've been pretty emphatic that Florida State was a top, one of the few national title contenders, and Clemson was not. And I thought just I'd kind of just share kind of what my team profiles look like and what we're getting at with these. So um, the offensive metrics here, Apex, we've talked about that. So that's what the team Apex was. GGAB, we've talked about that. I want to emphasize that amounts that are in green are one standard deviation or more better than the average, and amounts in pink are one or more worse. So you can see for basically all of the team offensive metrics, they were basically in the, one standard deviation above. Quarterback, again, uh, Travis was, in the top echelon of quarterbacks. He has about as many returning starts from last season as you could have. CS is career starts. Um, Little difference in Apex here because this is just against last season, and this quarterback specific number is against historical since I've started tracking. The O line was a little bit of a concern. They have the PYLC is prior year learning curve. That's my improvement metric. They had none because their team is so experienced on the offensive line. So they have, an elite level of career starts. That's what the CS is. So even though they didn't figure to improve significantly, they do have a lot of continuity and experience on that offensive line. Defense, there's not quite as much green in there. You've got their defensive apex was elite, not quite elite against the run, or defensive Ryan is really kind of your how well you contain explosivity, pardon me, from a defensive passing standpoint, and then power is the overall rating. this defense experience, it's the same thing as for the offense. So they actually returned an elite level of return starts from last season and career starts. Didn't expect to improve much, pretty much average. This PS is prime starts, just meaning of all the returning players, how many of their career of their projected starts over the next year figure to be in their prime of their careers. So they figure to be, having a lot of guys playing their best ball. Overall, their power ranking was a 16.1, which is in the top 5 of FBS. Only 16s in all of FBS were elite in both offense and defense, and they were one of them. And Jordan Travis is actually number 4 in returning apex. So that's a lot. And, this is where I get a little frustrated with people who had Clemson about the same as Florida State. They weren't even close on offense last season. Klubnik was highly recruited, but his apex was only 80. Very little returning experience here. You just kind of see all the green up here and just the blank slate that is over here. It's really easy to see a good graphical difference between these two teams. Only 4 returning starts on the offensive line for the 5 positions. That's pretty putrid. It just happens sometimes. You can't do anything about it, but it means it's going to be a tough time on the offensive line. Defense, as we would expect, they were good. They weren't typical Clemson great, but you look over here, huge improvement metric, and basically they return a lot of starts. So I was pretty bullish on their defense improving a lot this season. But the total power is 10 points difference. That's really significant. You can see the percentile ranks of the offense and total is not even close to Florida State. So, just kind of a little preview of why I liked Florida State coming into the season. And on that topic, what's really frustrating to me? I listen to a lot of college football podcasts, and I just love, he said sarcastically, all these national reporters now saying, hey, folks, let me tell you something. Florida State's really good. Hey, guess what? I said so over a month ago. Our ACC preview was literally in July. I love these guys that just swoop in now after seeing one game and clearly having to do no preparation. Just now they're telling us, hey, Florida State is good. Thanks, jerk. I knew that a month ago, but I guess that's what you're paid to do, is just say it better than I can. All right, end of sermon. Florida State, they won the week.
I'll just quick point on that, about the media. There is no reason Florida State should have been ranked that much below LSU in the rankings. There is those two teams. I mean, even the spread in the game. There was a couple points difference. Okay, yes, I think they were. Was it a neutral site game or no? Was it actually in the Florida State Stadium? I think. No, it was
in Orlando.
Site. Yeah, it was neutral site.
Neutral-ish.
Yeah, so I mean it's neutral sites. So that means they're saying LSU is a point or two better. So I think LSU was the 5th ranked team, Florida State was the 8th ranked team, I think. So okay, even then that's saying that there's basically no difference between these teams. I don't know. I can't remember which teams were 6th and 7th, but Florida State and I think Clemson was what 9.
Yeah.
That was the top 10 there made no sense. But then now I think people are like, oh well, now LSU is horrible. But no, Florida State could just be really good. And this is the thing. People are like, oh, LSU, they're done now. It's like, well, no. People were high on LSU for reasons. There was reasons to be excited about this LSU team. And okay, they got crushed, but I think LSU was down a defensive line, one of their best defensive linemen, due to some sort of weird suspension for something. I don't know. NCAA does weird things, but if you were high on LSU before, you should not be low on LSU now. You should just be even higher on Florida State. Is how they should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should people just be okay, now Florida State's just better than that team, and that's the thing. I think we could. Yeah. I think we could see them play again this year.
It's not impossible at all. If I'm looking, I see 1, 2, 3, only 4 teams. Only 3 teams have green all the way across, as we see here on Florida State. Yeah, guess what? Those teams are going to score a lot of points every week. And by the way, write off Brian Kelly after one game at your own peril. That's a real good way to lose money, is just start fading that. Well said. Thank you for bringing that up. So, okay. Oops. Mm-hmm. There we go. Okay. Oops. All right. Who lost the week, in your opinion?
It's hard to point to one. I mean, obviously, Texas Tech, that's pretty rough. Um, a couple others. I mean, you don't want to say Ohio State. You don't
Oh
want
my
like
gosh.
I'm low on some of these. I'm lower on some of these teams now. Like I'm lower on Ohio State. I'm lower on Texas, but they didn't outright lose the week. I'm just like, that's some problems there. But I guess like it's hard to find. Oh, I guess Florida also lost too. That was pretty bad. Um, we'll probably talk about Florida later. But yeah, like it's hard to be like, okay, this team lost. But I guess we'll go Texas Tech then. Yeah, and Baylor. I guess Texas Tech and Baylor they kind of lost. That was pretty bad.
You're very gentlemanly, not throwing Clemson in there.
Oh yeah, I mean we talked about them already, but yeah, Clemson's there too.
Yeah, I'm going a little beneath the surface here. I'm going to say Boise State. That loss to Washington was pretty brutal, and I selected this because it just served as a confirmation of kind of what I was saying about them preseason, my expectations. And this is, I'm not saying it's 100% confirmatory, but boy, this really makes me feel confident about what I thought about them through the season. Just to rehash for those of you who didn't tune into the Mountain West preview, here's kind of like a Cliff's Notes summary. So last season, before Dirk Cutter kind of came in and saved everything, I had their offensive plus minus as a minus 11.1, which is about as bad as it gets. Their offense was only going for 4.4 yards per play. And Hank Bachmeier, the quarterback, had an apex at 35. Um, so Dirk Cutter came in, saved last season, and Bush Hamden comes in to be the new offensive coordinator. And again, it kind of seems like nobody outside of this podcast really understands the magnitude of that change. Here's what Bush Hamden did at Missouri. He was the QB coach for 3 years, and this is under Eli Drinkwitz, who is a former offensive coordinator. So his apex by season was a 97, the best in 2020, then a 75, and then Connor Bazelak splits town, and then you have now he's at Bowling Green appropriately. Now you have Brady Cook last season who had an 86. So you've got 3 seasons, and he couldn't even get an average season out of anybody under a pretty respected offensive coach. And now he's coming in and supposedly just going to kind of keep the train going that Dirk Cutter got going. Well, what did we see on Saturday? 5.4 yards per play, which stinks. It's not as bad as last season, but it's not good. And Washington's defense was pretty shaky last season. They were about at USC level in terms of my ratings. And what do you know? Taylon Green had a 35 apex, just like Hank Bachmeier had before the change last season. And for reference, his apex last season in the last 8 starts of 2022, once he kind of got his feet under him, was 118. So this, the alarm bell is ringing as it relates to Boise State. I'm concerned, and I want to say probably 3 or 4 times we've referred to them as kind of dead money in the Mountain West Conference champs future pool. And I feel even more strong about that now. And we'll kind of get to another piece of that later in part 2. But man, if I'm a Boise State fan, I'm serious, and I kind of have a handle on things. I'm seriously concerned about what this team's going to do this season.
Yeah, it was actually I for this game I bet I didn't bet this game before it started. I didn't bet anything. Oh no, I didn't bet the spread pregame. But what I did was I bet oh my god, I'm blanking on Washington's quarterback's name. Michael Penix Jr. I bet him over
Penix,
2.5
yeah.
passing touchdowns at even. And then so that was really good. But then early in the game, I think the game was tied or Boise took the lead. Then I live bet Washington minus 7.5. And then I came back later and I saw the score and I'm like, oh, okay. I feel pretty happy right now. And yeah, that was a great. That was one of my better plays on Saturday. Was live betting the minus 7.5 there, and the City just absolutely destroyed. After it was close early, and then after that, Washington just obliterated them,
Yeah.
and like they just completely shut them down. And I still think this Washington team is a little unbalanced. I think some people are still overvaluing them significantly, but I'd say that I think this is the problem now because people are going to be like, oh, Boise State was half decent last year. Washington just crushed them. It means Washington's really good. But now I think we're saying, okay, maybe Boise could not be good this year because of the reasons we outlined above. So now we're like, okay, well they just crushed a bad Boise team. Well, what does that mean? Well, they're a Pac-12 team, so not much, right? I still think this Washington team is a little imbalanced. They don't really have a
Yeah.
particularly strong running game. They rely a lot. I mean, Michael Penix had 5 touchdowns. That's most of the touchdowns. I would say like this team is still a little imbalanced. I don't know how far they're going to get, but a lot of people are pointing to this win as like a statement win. Well, they beat a potentially really bad Mountain West team, so I'm not really I'm not going to be particularly high on them going forward from this game.
That's a good point. That's the kind of point I would usually make, but I was so eager to run in and show my report card with an A on it that I kind of forgot
Yeah.
to make that point. We're very well said, though.
Hmm.
All right, victory laps. You want to go first?
Yeah. So this was great. I was actually like when the model said 'cause you're pointing it out here. Um, with the model, like I had Florida State minus 16. I'm like, no, it can't be minus 16. That's crazy. And like in the first half, I'm like, okay. But to be fair though, Florida State wasn't like there were some moments where they were pretty much in control of that game. Like they were never really out of that game. They were like LSU beat them a couple times on defense, but like longer through the game, they were doing perfectly fine. And then in the second half, they just blew it wide open. And then the 16 was like, oh yeah, that actually was the correct spread in that game. Um, but like yeah, it was like I got them on the money line, and then I was very sad because I put money line down before the game, and I also had the futures bet, so I didn't want to put a ton on it, and I didn't particularly want to bet a +2 because it's like it's a
Yeah.
weird looking spread. I'd rather just put it on the money line instead. And then the one point I wanted to, because like I was watching that game on my phone, I was like ready to live bet it. Like the second, like when LSU initially got down the field and they were going to get a touchdown on the first drive, I was immediately be like +7.5, let's go. But then they stopped them. They didn't get the touchdown, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can't do it. And I think Florida State took the lead, yeah, and then LSU tied it, and then LSU got ahead 14-7. But then I was eating supper, and my hands were like all greasy, so I couldn't live bet that. And then Florida State immediately tied the game. I'm like, no. That was the time to bet it, and then they just crushed them. So I was like, oh. But again, I'm still happy I got it. I didn't get that last bit of juice out of the orange, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. So
It's the opposite of the dog ate my homework. I ate the dog's
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, like, and I just a little more specifically on that. I mentioned briefly that when my model, and this is, just to be clear, this is my line that came out of my brain, not my model, so it's not the same. Although I do like when there's a margin of 4 or more between my line and the market, and it's the wrong team favored. The returns on playing just the WTF wrong team favored, as my buddy calls it, the money lines on those are just historically just insane. The ROI is like somewhere between 20 and 30%. I haven't looked for a while, but those are some of my favorite plays. You've got the wrong team favored and margin of 4 or more. The other one is we just nailed Northern Illinois at BC. We both really like this. And to be clear, not only did our did our models basically have the wrong team favored again, but that was with Rocky Lombardi only having 3 starts, the Northern Illinois quarterback. So I think that those numbers are dirtied up for that on the Northern Illinois side. And again, I'm sorry just to make this a crap on national reporters, but that's kind of what I do. It's I heard 2 people say, "Hey, Boston College, they really, really are happy with Emmett Moorhead. I think he's going to do really well." It's like, well, have you seen his numbers? Do you know how to even interpret his numbers? He stinks. I think he only made it like 2 possessions, and they pulled him out.
yep,
So and to your point, I get frustrated about this, but what did you say? Good opportunity for us, and what happened? Great opportunity for us.
yeah. For Emmett Moorhead specifically, this is kind of insane. I somehow, and I don't know how they let me do this, I was able to bet Emmett Moorhead under 1.5 passing touchdowns at +160. It didn't even get close. Like it wasn't even like I
No,
like that was like they wasn't even close to 1. Like I was
no.
like they had to pull him to have any hope in this game. Like I don't know. Like I was just like I don't think they're going to score much. And like the thing is, they actually got lucky to get this thing into OT. It was their backup quarterback that got it into OT. They had to score I think 2 or 3 straight times to even get this into OT. And then but man though, like just like again, this is what we were saying. There's a short out there about us talking about Emmett Moorhead. And it's like, well, they always say this about Boston College, and sure enough, these guys disappointed. He didn't even make it the first half. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like I think this is it for Boston College. Like I think you're at a point now where okay, we need to start looking at potentially firing our head coach, right? And this is the thing. Actually, to be fair, we completely forgot about in our who won the week. We forgot about talking about Colorado there. But
Yeah.
there's an interesting point about Colorado here, and I'll kind of make it here. Is the fact that Colorado definitely won the week, won one of the winners of the week because they obviously brought in Coach Prime. They won the one that's good. One of the things, the big stories in college football now, obviously the ongoing saga of realignment. That's kind of cooled down a little bit for now, but you're now starting to see athletic directors starting to openly talk about a power two breakaway from college football, kind of like football itself moving away from the NCAA structure, governing itself, having its own kind of independent league. And the
Yeah.
thing is, okay, if you're in the big, like, if you're obviously for some of the bigger schools, like if you're Alabama, if you're Florida, you're Texas, Oklahoma, yeah, okay, fine. Ohio State, you punch your ticket, you're in. But there are a lot of schools that are kind of marginal in that. Nebraska is one of the ones that's marginal. Colorado, okay, yeah, if it was like a year ago, Colorado's not making it to the Super League. If it was 2 decades ago, yeah, maybe Colorado has a shot at the Super League, right? For
Yeah.
some of these schools that are kind of bigger legacy names, the next couple of years of how
Yeah.
your program does could determine whether or not you make it to the Super League or not. Like that's literally how this goes. Like if your team is horrible in the next 5 to 10 years,
Yep.
you might just not get that. Even if you're a legacy team, you won a couple national championships a couple decades ago, you're not getting the super team. But in the next 5 to 6 years, if you make a couple of college football playoffs, you could get into the Super League, right? And I think that needs to start being said with when you look at your head coaches at Boston College. Colorado obviously seems to have figured it out, but Nebraska, all these kind of legacy schools that have had big followings in the past and they're just really down on their luck in football recently. If you can't get a guy that's going to get you at least some success, potentially get you to a college football playoff, like to a top 12, then you got to get rid of him because if not, you're not making it to the
Yeah.
Super League.
None of those guys can afford their Clay Helton right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Colorado, there's a lot of the opinions are the same, and I want to frame a question to you a little bit differently. It'll be a statement, and you have to fill in the blank. Travis Hunter will be a Heisman finalist if Colorado wins blank games. How many games?
I like that question. That's very good. It's gotta be like 10 or 11.
Well,
Like
I would say 9 because they were so bad, and he's doing stuff you don't see people do at all.
the thing
Literally,
is,
if they win 9 games, you know how many people will want him to be a finalist?
see that's part of it too. See, the best part about this is that although he's Colorado Buffalo now, next year he's going to be on either USC or Ohio State. So, like
I
future
wish.
USC or Ohio State wide receiver Travis Hunter. But I mean, because here's the thing, like the thing is, I suspect a lot of the people on this team are going to immediately go to some other team next year. Like I don't like. There's even
I don't think
speculation that
they'll
someone's
leave
going to.
him. Come on, no.
There's
They're not gonna leave
speculation
Coach Prime.
there's speculation that he's not even going to be at Colorado next year. He'll get hired immediately else somewhere. Now I don't think they will. I think they're going to be like, okay, maybe you caught lightning in a bottle there because you had your son as quarterback. Let's see you do it again. But I don't know. I think see the problem is that, and I was thinking about this too, right? Because Travis Hunter, the odds I think are still like 33-1 for Heisman. And the thing is, for someone who's playing on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, that's kind of nuts. It's a huge possibility for candidacy that way. But at the same time, though, that defense, like, I mean, okay, yeah, they beat TCU, but we were lower on TCU going into the season anyways. This is, again, see, a lot of the positions we had some of them died a little bit, but a lot of them were like even stronger. Like, we were low on TCU. We did not think TCU was going to be the same caliber that they were last year. We were lower on them. So, okay, Colorado beat them. Okay, great. Colorado should probably not have been 21-point dogs. Seeing that game, probably should have been about 7-point dogs, give or take. But the thing is, okay, Colorado's massively improved, but also TCU has gotten worse. And you're even seeing that with a line this week. Colorado's only a 3-point favorites over Nebraska. That's not particularly great. I mean, this is a Nebraska team that did lose to Minnesota, probably should have beaten Minnesota, and the Nebraska team's not bad. But you're only 3-point favorites over a Nebraska team that only scored 10 points against Minnesota. Like, that means that the books don't fully believe in you yet. And I think the books are penciling in at least 3 to 4 losses there. And I think if they're penciling in 3 to 4 losses, I don't think he can win the Heisman. So that's why I still think the 33-1 is a bit of a sucker's bet there. But I think
Yep.
he's got to be. I think if they go to the conference championship game, yeah, he's a Heisman finalist. He's probably top 1 or 2. But I mean, to get to New York, I think they sent invites to the top 4. Yeah, maybe not. I think maybe 9 would probably be the cutoff. I think.
Okay. One other thing about Colorado that's really interesting. So the Pac-12 smartly tried to arrange it so that all the really good games are basically in the last like 5 weeks of the season. You remember you have Oregon, Washington, USC, and Utah all play each other basically in the last 5 weeks. And what's really cool about this is if Colorado kind of keeps this up, they're going to play USC and Oregon before we even get to October. So my gosh, if they win the next 2 against Nebraska and Colorado State, which is certainly possible, we could be at just fever pitch in terms of just, I mean, it was enough before the opener. I had just had enough of the promotion. It's going to be basically, I like, I don't know, like if LeBron got married to an English royal, I don't know, just the amplification of all the advertising is going to be just crazy. Oh my gosh,
No,
if they
and
beat Colorado State.
yeah, no, and this is the thing, right? It's like then, and this kind of ties into it, right? Colorado wins 8 or 9 games this year. They're competitive in the big. Like again, they're going to the Big 12 next year. They don't have to play USC. They don't have to play Washington. They don't have to. They won't have to play Oregon or
Yep.
Washington or USC next year. There is not like if they can keep most of this team, which I don't know if they can. If they can keep most of this team and keep a quarterback for next year, this team could potentially be like a favorite or a co-favorite to win the Big 12. Like there's not many teams I'd be scared
Yeah.
of in the Big 12 if I'm Colorado. Like Utah and like that's it. That's a very
Yeah.
small list of teams. And I mean TCU maybe could rebuild or something, but like it's a very small list of teams I'd be afraid of. And again, they could have like if there is a super league, Colorado was a dynasty a long time ago. They're in a state that's actually pretty growing pretty rapidly in terms of population size. They like if they do well in the next couple of years, they could potentially play their way back into Super League, right? So like it's crazy how this all goes, but like there's a lot of possibility here for Colorado, and it's kind of crazy to see this, but yeah, it's nuts. So,
Yeah.
but
It was not expected on my end, I can tell you that.
no,
All right. What we missed. Do you want to go first?
yeah, I had a couple of misses here, especially on some of those bigger spreads. It's funny, the one I was most confident about Alabama, I didn't bet that one. Probably should have bet that one. Ohio State, woof. That was not particularly great against Indiana. They did win the game, but in a very sluggish pace. There's definitely some problems on offense, and again, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. That's not supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
You have Marvin Harrison. You just throw him in the ball and you get a touchdown. It's not particularly hard. Now, I'm actually going to go back and rewatch that game. I've discovered now that there's a YouTube channel called the ACC Digital Network, and they actually have like full games of all the
Oh,
ACC, like all, yeah. So you can just watch them through the week. And like I was watching that. I was watching North Carolina, South Carolina today on lunch. That was great. Starts at noon, convenient for Eastern time people. But there's also a bunch of other ones on YouTube. So I'm going to go back and figure out what happened in that game. Because the data, like his PFF grade was Kyle McCord's PFF grade was pretty low, and I was confused why they didn't just bring in the other guy because he had named a starter before the game. Ryan Day had named a starter before the game, but then suddenly he was like, no, we're just going to stick with this guy. I'm like, okay. Like, you've got Notre Dame coming up in a couple of weeks. Now, you've got Youngstown State this week. Maybe, but there's, like, it's Indiana. Like, are you really that much more worried about Indiana than Youngstown State? Really?
yeah. I
Like,
did. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I mean, and maybe he didn't want to screw with McCord's psyche, like take him out before he had a touchdown or before he had like a few really good plays in a row. I'm thinking that's what it has to be.
I guess, but they got a touchdown pretty early in the game. I don't know. It was just a very, very weird game for Ohio State. I definitely expected them to come out a lot stronger than they were. And just that did not happen. Um, Yeah, we messed up on we missed Minnesota, Nebraska there. Now we were pretty high on Nebraska. We just thought Minnesota would be able to put them away. Turns out Minnesota's offense is horrendous. So
Well, it's one
that's
game.
something. It's one game, yeah. Or see, here's the thing, right? Because we only have one data point for a lot of this, it's like 50-50, right? Either Minnesota's offense is horrible, or Nebraska's defense is really good, right? So this is the thing.
Yeah.
It's one or the other, or a combination of both of those, right? So I think
I,
it's
I can make a pretty easy narrative about that, and it's because I have Minnesota over 7, but breaking in a new running back and Nebraska's Tony White defense can be a little tricky first time you see it. So I don't know. I'll need to see a lot more in the next game, but this isn't like there's a whole. If we compare this to what Boise State did, where I thought, man, a lot of the pieces look like they're pretty shaky, and then you get that effort that just confirms a lot of them. I think it's very different. Just lot of football to be played before Minnesota kind of goes down that elevator shaft. I think.
yeah.
I'll
I,
tell you what. Go ahead.
one more thing we kind of missed, and maybe this kind of goes into note for future reference. A lot of those big spreads didn't cash, and I feel like it's partly some of those teams were a bit worse than they are expected to be, but also I think some of the clock, like because of the new clock rules, I think it has had an
Mm-hmm.
impact on some of that. Now, I think just there being less plays in the game has, and I'm not sure if books had adjusted or books just laid a number and people were so used to being like, minus 30, it's fine, right? And I think that's something you need to, like, when you're laying a negative 30, I mean, obviously, I bet everything small this weekend, but like when you're laying a negative 30, you can't just be like, let's like put a, like, you don't just throw a negative 30 on. Negative 30 isn't nothing anymore. Before it was, when the clock stopped on first down, it was. But I think now, when it's not stopping on first down, now their games are just shorter. And I think especially blowout games like that. So it's a lot harder to cover, say, a negative 30, negative 35, negative 40.
I think that depends on the team. The Notre Dame game went by so quickly when they played Navy. I will say that the Oklahoma game, I basically heard a story about people say that was the longest game they'd ever been to when they beat up on Arkansas State. The USC games both have seemed just like games from last season because these are very high paced teams. I think to your point, if you've got, if you have like your classic Nick Saban pre Lane Kiffin teams where they just kind of like, put you in a crock pot for 3 hours, those are the lines that would go way down. If you're looking at your Flash Fry, Lincoln Riley kind of specials, I think those lines will kind of hang up. You reminded me, and I forgot to do it, and probably one more week is good anyways. I want to just compare points per game through 2 weeks versus the prior couple of seasons and just see what that changes on a points basis. I don't know if I know that there's cool metrics about was it like points per play, but I just don't know at the end of the day how much of a difference that makes in points. Maybe it's one possession, and who knows how key that possession is. I don't know. I think that there's probably a little bit of simplification in terms of that. But you make a good point. I'll tell you what I missed, and you called me out on it. Cam Ward just shoved it right in my face, man. Um, when we did, I forget which one it was, but Josh, our buddy Josh CFF at CFF Guys, basically gave us a little bit of background on Cam Ward when I was saying how much he unimpressed me last season, and he said, "Look, this guy's not a natural quarterback in high school, so it makes sense that he might have struggled moving up to the Power Five." And a little bit of background: in 2021, he was the quarterback at Incarnate Word for Eric Morris, and he followed Eric Morris to Washington State in 2022. And you can see by his game log here on the right. You look at his apexes here. He had one good game against Colorado State when they were just literally just kind of turned the thing down to the studs. And other than that, it's a pretty crappy season, capped off by an apex of 10 in the bowl game against Fresno. So then Eric Morris leaves. He is the coach at North Texas now, I believe. And they bring in Ben Arbuckle, who's about 14 years old. He looks like he was the OC at Western Kentucky, and I thought this is not going to work at all because this guy's basically known one system, and he struggled with it at times at this level. And Apex of 161 against Colorado State. My gosh. they just looked unreal. People are talking about how good the Pac-12 quarterbacks are, and based on this game, this guy belongs in the conversation. Is he Caleb Williams? No. Am I glad that USC is not playing Washington State this season? Absolutely. I have no need to see this guy on the schedule. And last week when I was making my bets, you just said, "Yep, you seem to like to play against Cam Ward." You called me out on it, and yeah, no more until my model
Yeah,
says otherwise.
yeah, it was. And again, this is, and I think you noted it at one point, or there's been a couple posts on Twitter about it. You had closing line value. I think this was at one point like
Yeah,
10 and a half, 11, 10. Then it closed at like 8.5, 9, and then they just got destroyed. Like I don't even. It's just the weirdest things happen with closing line values. Like games where
yeah,
you were closing line value, you lost. It was the weird. Now, is that sustainable long term? No, probably not. But like for one weekend though, the sharps were wrong, and that hurt a bit me on some games too. But like it's just like man, this was brutal. Now the one thing I will note here, and from your graph, and this is going to be there's going to be a very interesting game with Washington State this weekend against Wisconsin. And now
mm-hmm.
last year we bet this was we had Washington State 17.5 point dogs against Wisconsin. They went outright just the same week that we had App State versus Texas A&M. They went outright in that game as well. So that was a 17.5 point dog weekend for us last year. Now this year, this Wisconsin team has improved, and Cam Ward may have also improved. So that makes this a very interesting potential of what could happen. However, though, the interesting thing was, as you noted last year, his apex against Colorado State was that was his highest last year. This year, 161, still higher. That was his best apex. So, how is this? And Wisconsin was okay, not great. I don't think they won, but they didn't cover against a MAC
Buffalo.
team. So that's not a
Yeah,
great sign. But they're still probably trying to figure out some stuff. Their running backs were just
yeah,
went nuts in that game. But again, I feel like they're another victim of the okay, they're running a lot, so the clock's going to go down a lot faster. I feel like that they're a victim of that. So I have no idea what's going to happen in that game. I think this game is going to be fascinating. I just kind of want to watch this game. Colorado State, Wisconsin, Washington State. I'm fascinated what's going to happen in this game, and
yeah.
we'll go from there. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. I have a bunch of Wisconsin futures, so I hope Wisconsin wins. But I'm a little bit more worried about that now than I was a couple weeks ago. So
Yeah, for good reason, and we will we'll talk about it a little bit more in part two.
mhm.
All right, Narduzzi Awards. I'll go first here. I've got a couple. The first one, I've got to follow up. When we did our Sunbelt preview, I used a lot of adjectives to describe Coastal Carolina hiring Tim Beck, and none of them were complimentary. And my guy did not disappoint in that he disappointed everybody but me in basically what he did. That offense, and hey, it's, maybe it's not all Tim Beck's problem because Tim Beck just ran the Tim Beck offense and he completely neutered every skill that Grayson McCall has. I broke down basically Grayson McCall here in the 3 seasons they started under Jamie Chadwell, and you can see for the 3 seasons his apex was 180. It's nuts, 1% interception ratio and 32 rushing yards per game. And then his first game under Tim Beck, an apex of 53. The interception percentage 4.8%. I kind of did the reverse math, and I said if he threw interceptions at this ratio in his prior season, he would have had 36 over the prior 3 seasons, and he only had 8. And what really made me sad was some Coastal Carolina fan with like 20 followers who's not doesn't follow me just liked that tweet. And I felt, man, this is just somebody that's watching this and is so sad and is just searching for anything on Grayson McCall on Twitter, and he found that. And he's like, oh, I found something that makes me feel a little bit better, and he liked it. So shout out to my guy for liking my tweet with 20 followers.
Yeah,
And my apologies for dealing with Tim Beck. And then he ran for negative yardage, which, this is just nuts. It doesn't make any sense. It's just like you have no idea what's going on. And below I've got Caden Salter, who's the quarterback at Liberty. He started last season for Hugh Freeze, and you can see he, had typical freshman season, 86 apex, high interception percentage, and ran for 36 a game. And then, his debut under Chadwell, Apex at 108, no interceptions, and ran for 82 yards. Um, I guess long story short, Tim Beck is not, nor will he, or if he will be, Jamie Chadwell. Jamie Chadwell sneakily right away has this thing fixed. I'm officially scared of Liberty. I was uncertain when we did the Conference USA preview as to whether Salter would fit Chadwell's system, and already the answer is an emphatic, absolutely, definitely yes.
Yeah, Liberty is 10.5-point favorites against New Mexico State.
Yeah.
I think we're just not going to touch that one.
No, no. I do have a second Narduzzi award, and this is very specific to I think you call us the lower 48, and even more specifically, my household. Um, yeah, guess what? I had past tense Spectrum. So yeah, I was one of those people who couldn't watch anything on ESPN or ABC on Thursday, and hey, well done, Disney. They knew just the right time to pull their programming from Spectrum. I mean, that was just well executed. So Spectrum has lost a ton of subscribers. I forgot to check their chart. I'm going to check it now, but their stock price went down, about 4% on Friday. I'll check that right now. But your guy here, I've already signed up for YouTube TV, and I love it, and I am delighted. Couldn't be happier, and I feel kind of stupid for not being a part of the YouTube TV channel, TV family before. And looking today, Charter stock was down another 3%, so they're down 7+% since Disney basically shoved it in their face and showed them who's boss. So, well done, Spectrum. I'm so delighted to be no longer a part of your family. You got a Narduzzi or two for us?
Yeah, actually, so it's funny. I actually also have a weird telecom football TV thing. So I'll say my story too. So on the weekend on Sunday, in the middle of the day, I was out and I was like, oh okay, out shopping, and basically I was just out and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm just waiting for I was out with my girlfriend and she was trying on some clothes. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just gonna, as men do when women clothes shop, they sit down and they're on their phones. And this was in the middle of the Oregon State San Jose game, the San Jose State game. And I'm like, you know what? I have Bell 5 TV app on my phone. I can watch this game for a couple minutes. It's fine. And then this game was on ABC. I believe, or ABC or CBS. I can't remember which one.
ABC.
ABC. ABC. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll just put on ABC on my phone. Well, it turns out Bell will not let me watch ABC unless I am sitting at home connected to my home Wi-Fi. I cannot watch ABC unless I'm connected to my home Wi-Fi network.
Okay, sorry, it was CBS because it was actually
okay.
at San Jose State, but yeah,
it was. Yeah, sorry, it was one of the. I remembered it was one of the American networks. It was one of the American ones, and it's like, no, you cannot watch an American broadcast network unless you are at home, connected to your own home Wi-Fi network. I'm like,
well, that makes sense because there's no bigger threat to American media than a Canadian that's not at home. I know that firsthand.
Watching it on their phone in a mall, yeah, that's a huge threat to CBS as the company. Like, why? What possible reason would they have for me not being able to why? I can watch TSN, which is our equivalent to ESPN. I can watch that from the mall. I can't watch. I don't even know why. Like, it makes no sense. But no. All right, I was it was still in Canada. It wasn't in the U.S. I was just at a mall, like a bit away from my house, like 10 minutes from my house. Like no, you can't watch it. Sorry, but yeah, no, that was. I also want to give my second Narduzzi award. I'm going to give it to. Well, I don't know if it's exactly Billy Napier's fault, but it's just generally Florida. That was wow. There was. I cannot believe I actually have to give it to Florida for teaching me more about the rule book. I did not know that having two people on the field with the same jersey number was a penalty. That was news to me. So thank you for teaching me that very, very fine aspect of the college football rule book. How does it even happen? By the way, is that someone's job to be like, oh, okay, we only have one one of one jersey at the field. Like, why is there even two jerseys? This is like the joke where they're like, oh, we put the sugar next to the jar with arsenic, but we just don't have labels on them. So there's just like one white powder. Like, why would that even be a thing? Why would you have two copies of the number 3 jersey? Are you afraid that like a Wolverine is going to run on the field, shred one of the jerseys, and be like, oh no, I just lost my jersey? It's like, but we have a second one. Like, why would that even be a thing? I don't understand why you have two copies of the same jersey. But anyways, that's just one of the crazy things they did. There was 8 people on a field goal block. That was great.
Yeah.
Just that team was just not prepared to play a football game. And it's sad because if they had been prepared to play a football game, they would have won that football game. Graham Mertz, like it's funny because we've been doing the college football previews for a while, and I've said like, oh, like Graham Mertz could have like a Bo Nix like resurgent season, and you guys and the people we've had have been like, yeah, I don't think that'll happen, and like that almost 80% happened. He was not bad. He was actually okay, and like that wasn't the problem. The problem was the rest of the Florida team was horrible. That offensive line was horrendous. They were like actively trying to get Graham Mertz killed. But like it was crazy. Like back when with Richardson last year, like when Richardson would throw the ball, it'd be like, well, it's either going to go right to the receiver in a most beautiful pass you've ever seen, 10 yards right of the receiver, or right into a deep back's hands. It was one of those three, and 2 of those 3 are pretty bad. So generally, it's not particularly great. But Graham Mertz, the passes were accurate. His interception was literally off the hands of the wide receiver into the hands of like a linebacker. So like he was actually fine. It was just the rest of Florida that was horrible. It's crazy that this has happened. This should not have happened. But wow, that game was just they should have won that. They should have won that game. If they hadn't been horrible, they would have won that game.
Yeah. Kind of working backwards from what you said, if Graham Mertz is your quarterback, you don't want to be playing from 2 scores behind, first of all. That's like your absolute worst case scenario. The duplicate numbers, I can tell you why that happens. The players all like to have the single digits. So 2 number 3s is a little more forgivable than 2 number 73s. Now, they need to have a rule that says, all right, if you're on special teams, you're not going to get one of these coveted numbers. It's tempting the fates too much. And lastly, I'm a little concerned that arsenic is a white powder. I'm not going to ask about that anymore, but that kind of scares me.
Yeah, that's an old joke about having the arsenic next to the sugar. But yeah, no, I took chemistry, right? So I do know some of this stuff. But no, I didn't even know that was a penalty. So that's news to me. But
I think you've kind of answered why CBS doesn't want Canadians out and about, because that arsenic is a white powder. Okay, noted for future reference. I'll just kind of zip through the things that I saw that I wanted to kind of put in my notebook and remember for later. Florida and USC had interesting kind of beginnings. They both absolutely on defense completely sucked for the first drive. And then they actually did really well the rest of the game. So I kind of put this graphic together just to show how different things were and just how their form is probably dirtied up. Florida had a 1-play 70-yard drive defensively to start the game. And the rest of the game, they gave up 3.8 yards per play. USC gave up a long pass. They gave up 85 yards in 4 plays. And after that, they gave up 4 yards per play. And that included a bust with like a third string defensive back just getting beat. So I'm just saying I would not read too much into the final stats for these games as much as basically just saying, okay, what's fixable? And I think, certainly when it comes to Florida, I think it's very fixable. USC still got a ways to go because they've got some pretty solid branding in terms of crappy defense. I've got, just for a reminder, we talked about this a little bit in the Sun Belt preview, but for the people that weren't a part of that, here's the Southern Miss defense by season. So 2020, they were a minus 4.5. 21, they improved a little bit to a minus 4.1. And then last season, a plus 2.4. And why do I bring that up? Well, the Florida defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong, he was the defensive coordinator at Southern Miss those 2 years that they showed improvement, really big improvement in 2022. And I just kind of thought about this today at lunch. What even makes this more impressive is in 2021 and 2021, when he was the DEC at Southern Miss, guess who was in this division in the Sun Belt West? Billy Napier. So Billy Napier not only saw his resume, but he coached against him. So I'm hearing that Billy Napier might be in trouble. That would be such a stupid decision. He's recruiting very well. The NIL collective just completely submarined the quarterback position. And, I'm incredibly impressed by his staff. Austin Armstrong, I didn't really realize until now. I kind of forgot that they had Jay Bateman, who, was really up against it at North Carolina, as we outlined in the ACC preview, but he was awesome at Army. And he's a perfect fit for a Billy Napier kind of, grindy, punchy, run offense. He's a perfect complement to that. So I should probably send an invoice to Mr. Napier for my services here, but I just, I'm optimistic, and this is just another reason where, yeah, they were sloppy. The special teams thing was just a joke from what I heard, because Spectrum didn't let me see. It's pretty clean on defense after that first play of the game. Other. I'm sorry. Did you have anything else on that?
Yeah,
You're gonna chime in.
I will say. Yeah, I heard a lot of people have said like, "Oh, Florida's like Billy Napier is in trouble," but like some people like they're not going to do it this year or not. I the thing was that was really sloppy, and again, I even said that I don't know how much of it is on Billy Napier specifically. Again, Grant Mertz was not horrible. That's not nothing, right? We've seen Grant Mertz be
Yeah.
absolutely horrible. That was among his better games. Although it didn't have a touchdown pass, that was not bad. And I'm not completely out on Florida. I just think they had a really bad game, and I think they blew a completely winnable game against a Utah team that, like, Utah was 9.5-point favorites to open the season. Now, okay, maybe that was with Cam Rising, but like that was with Cam Rising at the 9.5. But like they could have won that game, and I don't know if had Florida not played horribly, I don't know if Cam Rising would have maybe like Florida could have won that game. I think, and even with Cam Rising in there, they maybe could have won that game too. Now they have 1 week off. They're playing some FCS team. I can't remember what its name is, but then after that they've got Tennessee. So like here's the thing: you go play an FCS team, you clean up whatever that was, and next week if you're 21-point dogs against Tennessee, a Tennessee team that was good but not their defense was good against Virginia, but their offense was iffy a little bit. You give me like 2-3 scores against Tennessee, I might take that. We'll see. Let's see what that line is. Let's see how they do this week. Let's see how Tennessee does this week. But like, I'm not completely ruling out betting Florida against Tennessee. We'll have to see.
No, and I kind of would almost hope that they really don't. I hope the improvement gets a little bit hidden, and they don't blow out whoever they play 70-3. That sounds like a classic. Just oh my god, and everybody would just be tipping the boat in the Tennessee direction, and I think you could get a nice fat number to grab if you like Florida.
Yeah. Oh, because everybody's going to be on Tennessee. That's why I think it's going to be 21. Like if you have a sneakily good Florida performance this week, and no one really catches it, and Tennessee looks good this week, then you're at least it's at least 21 points after that last week, right? And I think you could definitely you could get 21, 21 and a half, maybe even more, depending. So,
yeah. Also, I just because I'm kind of surprised I didn't do that, but I ran the Apex for Graham Mertz 101, which is I'll put it this way. That's really good if you're at Utah, which is not an easy place to play, and you're playing from behind. I think quite a few teams would take that, especially out of him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting discussion. Yeah, Florida's going to be like a sneaky, interesting team to watch, which not in the same manner I thought about a month ago.
And the other thing, one last thing on Florida, I will say, is the fact that one possible reason why they didn't look good was because of the hurricane. They did have to fly out to I think, Texas to practice for a day or two, and then I don't like that. Seems that's a bit too much of an excuse, but like maybe that had like I don't know. We'll see. Let's see if they can clean this up. But like here's if they like here's the thing. We could be talking basically 2 weeks from now about how they like were competitive against Tennessee, and then we'll be like, okay, well maybe that was just a bad game and stuff like that. So Yeah.
Maybe that day the extra day of travel is when they're going to sort out uniform numbers on special
Yeah.
teams.
That was they were like, oh, we were gonna do that day, but then the hurricane stopped us, so that we never
Yeah,
actually did figure out the special teams
just
thing.
forgot. Yeah, ran out of time, coach. Sorry.
Forgot that meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Some more quick hits on noted for future reference. Michigan State, even though they beat Central Michigan, they only ran for 4 yards per attempt, which is concerning. Even more so, Michigan. Just doesn't make sense at all. They ran for less than 4 per attempt against Eastern Carolina. Michigan, I have as the best non-option rushing attack. This is interesting. Maybe it's just because Harbaugh wasn't there. Maybe because they were distracted. I'm gonna say it's maybe a 4% chance that the Harbaugh circus maybe is starting to catch up a little bit with them because he's just all his weirdness sometimes just brings too much attention and not in a great way.
I want to say something about Michigan too. So Michigan is another one of those big favorites. I think they were like 35-point favorites. Did not cover.
Mm-hmm.
I like this is the thing. I before this week I thought this was gonna be like, and a lot of the people like it was funny when when you were watching games later on in the day and they were like the highlight package like, oh, Michigan got the job done against ECU again. No mention of the fact that they failed to cover the spread. We're even close to it. They were eight. No mention of the fact that they massively underperformed market expectations. No, we're just got the job done. Yeah, sure. That's what matters against ECU. They got the win, right? Like, oh, they saw 30 on the scoreboard. That's good. Like, no, that's not how this was supposed to go, guys. Like, like Alabama put up 56 against Middle Tennessee State. That was good. That's getting the job done. Michigan, like, okay, they didn't limp to a win, but like that was a bit closer than expected. This is the thing. The big assumption in the Big Ten has always been like, okay, Michigan's going to clean up. Ohio State's going to have a down year. This is Michigan's to win. After that result, and again, we have a couple more weeks here now. Okay, possibly the loss of Harbaugh, but like, how much does Harbaugh really matter when you're playing ECU? Right? Does he really matter that much against ECU? I am looking at this point. I'm looking, and I look at Penn State, and maybe now is a good time to buy in on Ohio State. I'm looking for someone else to win the Big Ten. I think, and I said this before. I said like, okay, everybody's going to pick Michigan because they're returning the same team. But you know what? Like sometimes just keeping the same people, the defense regresses. Everybody just plays a little bit worse than last year because they think they've got it. I think Michigan could be in a little bit of trouble here. That was concerning. Maybe when Harbaugh comes back, this gets all fixed. But like, I am looking for potential value at. I mean, Ohio State fell in odds because of that debacle there with Kyle McCord. If he figures it out this week against Youngstown State, passes for 4 touchdowns, I think there's value on Ohio State and potentially even Penn State. Penn State looked pretty good against, not amazing against West Virginia, but not bad against West Virginia either. So I'm looking for that game. That score alone is making me think that maybe there's some value on other teams to win the Big Ten rather than Michigan.
I think so too. All right, Indiana. I'd heard a couple reports. Oh, they really like their new offensive coordinator and quarterback. They think they're going to improve on offense. Well, maybe Jim Knowles completely got things fixed at Ohio State, but Ohio had 153 or Indiana had 153 total yards and an apex of 29. So I'm officially not optimistic about their new offensive coordinator and quarterback.
Indiana, do you want to make the Super League or not?
Oh, yeah. No, not happening. Sorry. Texas Tech. I kind of mentioned this last week about that line only giving 14 to Wyoming team that can't pass the ball, and that's your Big 12 dark horse. And I don't know, maybe they just completely overlooked Wyoming, but that's not what a dark horse looks like. And going back to the top of the episode, maybe I'll pull up their team profile next week. It didn't scream like, oh my God, big step forward. So even before the season starts, I'm on my end killing that narrative. Not that I believed it in all coming into the season.
Mm-hmm.
BYU 14, Sam Houston 0. This is interesting that BYU only ran for 112 yards and Keaton Slovis had an apex at 36, which is extremely concerning. Now, I looked up, Sam Houston actually had a really good defense last season, even though they were in FCS. I asked our guy, Brandon, Big 12 Mafia, I said, how concerned are you about this? And he just said, very. So this will be something to watch. He didn't have an optimistic like, "Hey, game one, we'll see." He was like, I'm really concerned about what I saw." Um, so BYU might I don't know. I'll be interested to see as they actually are in a conference this season how they enjoy that and the different defenses that they get. I forget if they play Iowa State. That would be one to watch because that's a serious defense.
I watched the second half of this game. This was somehow a Pac-12 after dark game, basically, and not in name only, because it was late Saturday,
Yeah,
and basically I was 7-0 at halftime, and I'm like, okay, BYU's clearly just messing around here. They're gonna finish this game, and I was so close to betting the minus 14.5, but then the book pulled it away from me right before kickoff, and then after kickoff they gave me minus 12.5, and I'm like, okay, I'll take that, and thank you, books, for that, because that barely
yeah,
covered. But man, that was a ride, man. Wow. Okay. I mean, here's the thing: Sam Houston State's offense was horrible. That was really
yeah.
bad. But also BYU just could not move the ball. Now maybe they can fix that. Again, we talk about this, right? Maybe Sam Houston State's actually going to have a very sneakily good offense, and this is going to be like an under team for the entire year, right? Maybe we're just going to be like
Defensively,
yeah, defensively. Like maybe
yep,
every Sam Houston State game are going to be under, right? But like, and BYU, but like again, we had questions and marks about Slovis last year at Pitt. That didn't go so
yep.
well. Now we have question marks about Slovis again, right? This is the thing, and I don't understand why he moved to BYU. It's at best a lateral move, maybe a slight downgrade at worst, right? Now obviously BYU lost their quarterback, so they needed someone, but I don't understand why they decided that why Pitt didn't retain this guy. Because Pitt also didn't look particularly good this week either. So yeah, it was just yeah. BYU might have some problems here, but again, we were relatively low on them as well. We were like maybe a bowl. We'll have to see. I don't know. That's one of the games, so we'll see. But I don't know. I think
It,
it's gonna be interesting.
I like that Sam Houston is underplayed. Just I think they're just ideal. Underrated defense and inept offense. That quarterback, his numbers were so bad. I think like he had like an apex in the 50s last season at an FCS level. Um, God, they could almost be like the Iowa of Conference USA. um,
That's hilarious.
James Madison University quarterback Jordan McLeod, my guy, he reappeared. I was a Jordan McLeod truther in 2021 in Arizona. He has resurfaced at JMU. Now Bucknell, I'm doubting is any good, but my guy had a 262 apex. I'm happy. I always thought he was good, and I'm glad he's got a not just the opportunity to start, but for a really, really good program. So I'm looking to take advantage of that sooner than rather than later, literally. Marshall, who I was very bearish. Oh, you had something on JMU?
Well, actually, I suspect we're going to talk about this later, but JMU opening as 7-point favorites against UVA. That's insulting
Yeah.
to James Madison. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. In part two, stay tuned. Marshall, also in the Sun Belt. I was very bearish on them in the Sun Belt preview, and my gosh, they beat Albany by 4 points. They trailed at half. They didn't lead in this game until the fourth quarter at home against Albany. Oh boy. They only had 21 points for the game. I just am not a believer in Charles Huff. I bet him under, I forget, like under 5 or 5.5. I think the bottom falls out here for Marshall this season, and this is not a good start for your guy Huff. I don't know how Troy gave up 30 points to FCS Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin only had 240 yards for the game, only 4.1 per play. I don't know how you give up 30 points in that circumstance. I wasn't motivated enough to dig into the play-by-play, but I think that their form's probably dirtied up a little bit. I think if people see 30, they're going to see that instead of the 4.1 per play. So Troy, I don't know. They might be branded and people believe in them, but maybe that's enough to kind of get people off their scent a little bit. San Diego State. Yeah, that's right. They had a -4 apex for the game. They had to recover an onside kick to seal the win over Idaho State. Idaho State, who went 1-10 last season in FCS, and they gave up 37 points per game. Brady Hoke, awesome. Love you, guy. Can't wait to bet against you. God, I love guys like Brady Hoke. We talked about what I love about college football. I should have just mentioned Brady Hoke too. Just guys like him.
Mm-hmm.
Our guy Grayson James got benched, the FIU quarterback. Rest in peace, his career. Well overdue. Maybe that's like part 2 of that Netflix show that we talked about last week about what happens in that quarterback room.
Weren't they losing against Maine too?
Yeah, they won 14-12. Good job. So, this is interesting. Charlotte held South Carolina State to 168 yards on 55 plays. Now it's an FCS team, but I don't care how bad they are. Charlotte was, bottom 5 bad in terms of defense, and they actually lost to William and Mary last season. So this is a huge step forward for a defense that just sucked last season and had no reason to expect any improvement at all. This is interesting because Charlotte was a butt of my jokes consistently last season, and this got my attention. And I don't know if you saw this. The Moon God got injured against Auburn.
Aww.
Yeah,
I didn't see that. Yeah, but he did get benched. So
yeah,
he didn't play out the game. So
they said he just wasn't the same. He wasn't able to cut or do this or that. So I don't know how long he'll be out because it's Massachusetts and nobody covers Massachusetts football. So I guess we'll just have to find out next time that they're on TV whether he's playing or not, or just check box scores. So
yeah,
kind of my miscellaneous notes for week 1. Anything else that struck your fancy that we didn't talk about?
I'm gonna just call it up quickly. I have one big one regarding Texas and their not convincing 37-10 win against Rice. JT Daniels, the Traveler, get 2 interceptions. He gave them 2 interceptions, and both of them were within the 50. And this is the thing we said about Texas, right? We said this last year in the bowl. We said this in the Big 12 preview. We said that with Sark, he needs to be able to run the ball to have an effective passing offense, right? We said this, that he needs seasons with massive amounts of rushing yards to be able. Basically, from his time at Alabama and stuff, he has these amazing passing trick plays, which are great. But the problem is you have to make the other team afraid that you're gonna run the ball, because the second you do that, then you can open up all kinds of passing opportunities. But if not, then they're just gonna drop 8 and you're screwed, or drop 7 or whatever, and then they're basically not. If they don't defend against the run, you've got nothing. They only ran for 4.1 yards per play against Rice. A school that is barely in FBS. That's rough. But then look, right, 300 yards passing. They had Quinn Ewers pass 30 times in the game. That's a lot higher than he did. So last year they played ULM. They crushed ULM. And this is the thing, 158. I had the stat too, actually. I think I forgot to write this down. 1 second. Basically, if you look at last year in games in which they had under 200 yards rushing, or there was a number, I can't remember whatever the number was. It was basically around this number. They were 1-6 in games, or no? How many games did they lose last year? No, basically all their losses.
They lost 5 games.
They lost 5 games. They were 1-5 in games in which they had under 200 yards rushing, and they only had 158 against Rice. So that's concerning. Quinn Ewers had to pass, and then now, interestingly enough, I don't know why they brought in Malik Murphy. I don't know why they didn't bring in Archie Manning, but he had 40 yards of pass in basically 5 attempts. So that basically brought the total up to 300. But again, you needed Quinn Ewers to pass for 260 yards against Rice, and he was responsible for 3 of the 4 touchdowns, and then 1 of the rushing touchdowns too, which is concerning because he had 12 yards of that 158 rushing. I am concerned. This is concerning, and this is the thing is immediately I saw Alabama -6.5. I grabbed that. Alabama's going to shred them this week. I think people have a false conception that this game is going to be close because it was close last year, and they're forgetting the fact that Texas has lost 2 running backs to the NFL. Their top running back was Jaden Blue. He got 5.5 yards a carry on 10 carries. Jonathan Brooks, he had 12 for 52, 4.5, 4.3, they're going to get absolutely shredded by Bama. This isn't even going to be close. And this is, again, filed away, right? One of the things we said, oh, there is, like, Texas is massive favorites to win. Basically, they were basically even money to win the Big 12. Actually, that's come down. They were actually minus 110 on Sunday or Monday. They're back up to plus 100 now. Like, again, this is a team that is not good. I don't think this team is going to be good this year. I think we could be looking at like I have minus 9, like I have under 9.5 wins. I'm very very happy about that. I would not be surprised if Sark gets fired this year. To be honest, I think there's a chance that if you make Quinn Ewers pass, this could all fall apart, and this could be bad, and this could end up getting multiple people fired. So yeah, like start looking at Texas. Get ready to start fading Texas. I think we're gonna have some amazing Texas fade opportunities this year.
Can I just give you one little nugget, and then just to wrap up part one of this week?
Go ahead.
What you described is exactly how USC lost to Boston College on the road in 2014. And to wrap up part one, yes, folks, Steve Sarkisian was outcoached by Steve Adazio. Thank you. See us on part two. Good night for now.